weekend, the UFC touches down in Toronto for UFC 231, where we're going to take another crack at the Brian Ortega versus Max Holloway fight for the undisputed featherweight title. Earlier this year, these two were set to clash, but Holloway was pulled from that fight last minute for showing concussion-like symptoms during fight week. Thankfully, it seems as though everybody's healthy now, and we're going to be able to look forward to a couple of the very best featherweights on the planet making the walk this Saturday night. But it's the co-main event of this card that I'm here to talk to you about today. It's a fight that, to be perfectly honest, wasn't something that I was overly intrigued by in the lead up to this event. And by no means is that a knock on the two athletes in any way, it's just something that didn't excite me for whatever reason. But that all changed when fight week hit. I don't know what exactly it was that made me do a complete 180. Perhaps it was the first episode of UFC's Embedded being dropped that kicked it into gear, but I now find myself highly anticipating Joanna Jedrzejczyk versus Valentina Shevchenko. The two have fought before. In fact, they've fought each other 3 times in the past. This weekend will mark the 4th time they've competed against each other. Perhaps it's happened at some point, but have we ever seen two athletes in this sport fight each other that many times? I'm not so sure. But it's worth noting that the 3 previous fights were Muay Thai bouts. It's also worth noting that Shevchenko won all 3 of those bouts. MMA isn't Muay Thai, and while I don't expect either of these women to try to take the fight to the mat, and in all likelihood this is going to be contested on the feet, striking in the sport of MMA versus striking in the sport of Muay Thai / kickboxing are 2 completely different things altogether. And in MMA, the more skillful striker doesn't always win, as we've seen time and time again. The octagon is huge in general, let alone in comparison to a kickboxing ring. The space in which you fight being so vastly different is a way bigger factor than the casual viewer may give credit for. When you're used to fighting in a smaller space with 4 corners, your sense of space to cut somebody off or to get out of the way yourself is completely different. You also have to consider that when your back is against a cage, you just as well have your back against a brick wall. You have nowhere to go in terms of the ability to move your head out of the way. Whereas, when you have your back against the ropes in a ring, you just as well be in a parking lot, and you have the ability to dip and move your head as far back or to the side as to your heart's content. Never mind the fact that in MMA, striking is entirely different because of the threat of the takedown. Whether it be being reluctant to throw a head kick, or any kick for that matter, just having to consider the fact that your leg could be caught and you could be forced to the mat is completely foreign to a kickboxer, and it has a severe effect on the decision-making process. Couple all of that with the fact that you're wearing 4-ounce gloves as opposed to 10-ounce gloves, and that alone is enough to totally throw somebody off. It's not just that the margin of error is far less wearing smaller gloves, but the tendencies you develop in striking defense from the big gloves makes it far more likely you get hit with a shot using the smaller ones. The point is, although these two have fought 3 times before, this 4th time is going to be unlike any other. And as mentioned, while I highly doubt we're likely to see any wrestling or jiu-jitsu in this contest, the fact that it's an MMA fight has me viewing this bout as if these two have never fought before. I am bearing in mind that psychologically, Valentina has the edge by a wide margin. The circumstances in which they were fighting last time were completely different and a few lifetimes ago, but they still fought 3 times, and every time they got in there, Shevchenko left the victor, and that bodes very well for the Russians' confidence. Factor in JJ is a smaller woman, and it's no surprise she's the betting underdog. But these two have a history of having a very high output as well as producing long back and forth fights, and I have to imagine that's what we're in for come Saturday night. There's none of that disingenuous, fabricated pre-fight drama, just 2 elite competitors competing for a world title, and I think this is going to bring out the very best in Jedrzejczyk. It's been a while since we've seen her fight without carrying the burden of pre-fight theatrics, and I think that this is just going to bring out the absolute best in her. No matter what the outcome is, I foresee an entertaining fight ahead, and one that does not go the distance. I'm picking Valentina Shevchenko to win this fight, but I'm totally preparing myself for JJ to pull off the upset. It's always when an outcome seems like a foregone conclusion that the MMA gods put us right in our place. UFC 231 goes down this Saturday, live from Toronto, Canada.